Hello, welcome to Flight Test Tech. I'm David, and today we're going to be building the RV-12iS. Vans Aircraft has partnered up with us to build a full-scale aircraft, and I decided to make a small version of it so you guys can follow along with us. Let's get started. The first piece in your kit you're going to need is this one right here, and we're going to go on ahead and get this cut out and weeded. First things you want to do here is these side pieces. You're going to just take your knife and go gently along here. You don't want to go all the way through and hit the paper on the other side. You just want to cut through the foam, make sure it's all the way through. Now, this plane might seem a little intimidating to start off with, but it actually goes together really easy and quickly too. There's some different cuts and folds in here than what most flight test planes already have. I can guarantee once you do a couple of them, it's actually going to be a lot easier for you and you're going to enjoy it. So we're going to just take these and peel them off right here. And the same thing on this other side. All right, now that you have that done, we're going to bevel this front edge here. Now I made a lot of etch marks in the foam, so that way you can have a nice place for your blade to follow. So you're just going to come along, get your blade right down to the table, and just follow this line right around and keep your blade on the table. Now if you're doing this on your dining room table, we have a crafty kit. The box that it comes with actually unfolds and becomes a build mat, so I recommend using that. Okay, once we get this bevel done along here, we're going to come through on this line. You can see there's two etch lines on both sides of this score line. We want to go right down this center one here. Not quite all the way through like before. Just cut like that. Once you do that, you can fold it over, and then you want to follow this etch line right down to the center point of paper here. Then we're going to flip it over, do the same thing on the other side. Like that. We're going to do the same thing on this next one down here. And if at any time you actually do skim this paper, when you open it up and there's going to be a little cut right here, it's okay if you do that. All you have to do is put a piece of tape over it and you'll be just fine. We've got one more to do right here. All right, so the next piece you want to start out with is this piece right here. We're going to just set it flat down here, and we're going to cut right along here, here, there, and there. We're going to peel the foam off like so. We're going to also do the same thing here, all the way around this curve. And peel all this. Okay, the next step, we're gonna run right down this line right here. Crack that in half. Once we have it folded over, we're going to do the same thing as before and just follow this radius right around to a nice bevel cut. I noticed a lot of times when you get into these corners, you got to kind of rock the knife a little bit. Like that. Then we're going to flip it over. Do the same thing on this side from right at this point, all the way across to there. And again, we're going to do it from here. You got to pay attention and make sure you get your knife right down in this corner. Like that. Now I'm going to grab a barbecue skewer out of my hardware pack from the kit. And I'm just going to go down all of these lines like so. Just kind of push it down, nice and even pressure. Same thing on this side. Then I'm going to take this and just hold this flat on the table and gently rock this up so it kind of gets its shape. Same thing on this side. It's going to end up straight up and down, but I'm actually going a little bit past just to give it a little bit more flex so it keeps that memory a little bit better. All right, now at this point, I'm sure you guys have realized we've added a lot more etch lines and things of that nature to this kit. And the reason behind it is we're trying to make this as easy as possible for you guys to build. And I think it's going to be a lot more enjoyable. And hopefully we'll start doing this a lot more in kits in the future. So now that we've got this all cut out, we've got our bevel lines here and here, along here, and all of this peeled foam here. We're going to actually take this, lift it up right in the middle. We're going to put a bead of glue right down in here. A little bit more here. We want to avoid this 45 area here, and then we want to do back here. I'm going to lay that flat on the table, and if any glue pops out, you just take a scrap piece of foam, just squeegee it off. Make sure if any got down in that 45, you squeegee it off as well. We just want to hold this nice and flat for a few minutes and wait for it to dry. All right, now that this is dry, we're going to find this piece right here, and this is our dihedral gauge and also our 90-degree square. So if you just lay it flat on the table, this edge right here is 90 degrees. What we're going to do is lift this up like so. We're going to put this right on here. Make sure that it's good. If it feels good and tight and you're comfortable with it, we're just going to take that, set it back down, put a bead of glue right down in here. Tip it back up, put our gauge right here, and hold it until it's dry. All right, now that that's dry, we're going to take this, gently fold it up, make sure everything fits together real nice. And we're going to do the same thing on this side just to kind of get an idea on how it's going to look. Looks really nice. So now we're going to glue this together. So all I'm going to do flip this down like this. I'm going to put some glue right on this 45 here, directly up onto this surface, and go right into the corner of the paper, like so. Then we're just going to roll this up, hold it in place until it dries, and then we'll move on to the next side. All right, that side's all dry. The other side, going to do the exact same thing. Just put a bead of glue right in here, right along the edge of the paper there, all the way up to the tip. Set it back down on the table, roll it over. I'm also kind of keeping an eye down here, right along this edge, to make sure that we're staying pretty lined up and everything's looking really nice. Set it back down on the table and just hold it until it's dry. All right, now that this piece is dry, we're going to actually set it up here off to the side. We're going to get our plywood piece that comes in the kit like this, and we're going to cut some pieces out to make our latch. All right, to make the latch, you're going to need these pieces right here. I'm going to come along and just make sure that there's no rough edges on these. It's very important to make sure this stuff is smooth You can even go along with a piece of sandpaper if you don't feel comfortable doing it with a knife. And it's just going to make the latch function a lot better and be smoother. All right, for this section, we're going to use some CA, and it's available on our store. We use Zap products. They're one of our partners, and I highly recommend their products. They're available on our store, like I said, so make sure you check them out. The first 3 pieces I'm going to need are these ones right here. Once you have these 3 pieces, what you want to do is take this, set it right on there. Then this one's going to go right on this side. I'm just kind of test fitting them, make sure they look okay, which they look great. Now that I've test fitted it, I'm going to take this off. I'm going to take some CA, just put a little bit. You don't want to do too much because it'll make a mess pretty quick on you. I'm going to stick this right in here like that. Now that I have it in place, I'm going to take some CA kicker. Just give it a couple little sprays. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here. We're going to put it right along this edge. And you want to make sure that both of these arms right here are on the same side. Like so. And just keep the spacing all the way down here even. Now that that's dry, we're going to take this piece right here and we're going to slide it right down in this slot so it sticks out the other side and looks like that. And then we're going to take this piece right along top here, just do a check fit, make sure it fits good. It's perfect. All right, now you have to be very careful on this part because you do not want to glue this in place. This has to be able to slide back and forth easily. So I'm going to take some CA, put it right on this edge. You don't want to add too much. You add too much, then you've got, or it ends up gooping out and making a mess. And we're going to take this, slide it right down on there. Hold it in place. Put some more kicker on it. I'm also going to add some kicker to this side. Now, if you're really intimidated about doing this and accidentally getting glue in some bad places, you can actually stick this piece on and add some glue along this edge here. Spray some more kicker on it so it dries really quick. Now I'm just checking to make sure that it still slides freely, which it does. And then I'm going to go back through, just add a little bit of CA right to these edges here. And maybe some along here too. We just want to make sure this is nice and strong and lasts a long time for you. All right, so now that we have this all glued together, we're going to grab a rubber band out of our kit. And I'm going to take this and actually just tie it in half right in the middle. Just with a simple knot. Like that. Now that you've done that, we're going to take our razor blade, just cut off one end of it, and we're going to stick it right on here. I'm going to put the knot towards this side, wrap it over those two, spin it around, flip it back on itself like that. And then conveniently, we have a very nice plywood latch that holds our canopy on. It makes it really nice to get access to the top of the airplane so we can swap out our battery without having to flip the airplane over or anything along those lines. All right, now that we've got this all done, we're gonna bring this piece back up, and I strongly recommend you washing your hands and making sure you get any glue and black stuff from the plywood off of your hands before you continue on. So we're gonna take this, slide it right in here like so, make sure it fits good. Looks really nice. So I'm gonna pull this back out. I'm just gonna go along here and put a bead of glue right in here. We don't wanna go too much because we don't wanna plug up our latch. Like so. And we're gonna take this, slide it back down in there, press it down. We wanna make sure we're all the way up against right here. Once that's dry, we're gonna check and make sure that this latch still functions properly. All right, now I'm just gonna reinforce this a little bit by putting a bead of glue right on the edge here. And same thing on the other side. And a little bit along the back. I'm gonna flip this up like so. Take this piece that I had you weed out earlier. It's going to slide right in here. So right now I'm just checking to make sure everything fits together real nice. It looks good. So we're going to take this back out. I'm just going to put a bead of glue right on this edge, right to this mark here. Same thing on this side. And then we're going to come along in here. Some glue right along this edge here, and here, and right here. And once we get it slid in there, we're going to use the table as our friend. Come over here, just set it down. Make sure you're pushing in on it and down at the same time. Hold that until it dries. All right, now that that's dry, we're gonna lift this up. We're gonna come along, put some glue right in this 45 here, right on this edge here, and on this edge over here. And we're just going to the next 45-degree angle mark. Gonna set it down on the table, flip it up. Once again, make sure everything's lined up good. We're just gonna push in here, kind of put a little bit of down pressure onto the table. We're going to continue on with the same process. Go right along this 45, down this side to the next 45, same thing on this side. Push it down on the table and just put a little bit of pressure inward on it as well. All right, so now that that piece is dry, we want to move on to flipping this in here. This one's a little bit more complicated. Sometimes you got to kind of stick your fingers in here and push out on the outside walls. Just depending on how tight of a build you have. Once you make sure it fits good, we're going to pop it back open. We're going to apply glue right to this 45 here. And then we're going to continue along here. We want to stop just short of the wing right here. And then continue on the other side of it. Along this 45. And same thing on this side, making sure to skip where that wing attaches. I'm also going to take just a little bit of glue right inside of here on this edge of the foam. Now we're going to flip this back closed, push out where we have to. Watch, make sure you don't get glue on your fingers. It can be a little tricky. And push in on it. And we want to make sure that you push in far enough so that there's a little tiny lip sticking over the edge right here. And that's so when we join this up with our next piece, it'll overlap and it'll just look a lot more finished. I'm just kind of going around, applying a little bit of pressure here and there just to make sure that it's seated in good. All right, now we're all done with this section of the fuselage. Let's set it aside and get the next pieces ready. This will be the next piece you want to grab out of your kit, so go on ahead and pop it out, and we'll show you how to get it all weeded out and ready to go. Now, first thing we want to do is break this open. We're just going to apply some glue right down in this crack right along here. Stop short of any of these lines. Put a little bit there. And once again, if you have any that's kind of gooping out of there, just take some scrap piece of foam, just squeegee it off. I'm gonna lay this nice and flat on the table and wait for it to cool down. All right, now that that's dry, we're gonna actually come along with our knife and cut right along here. Make sure you don't go all the way through, we're just scoring the foam. Same thing on this side. And do the same thing down here. Here. There. And there. Once we get those all done, we're going to go on ahead and pop this foam off. Then we're going to score through here and through here. And one more time up here. And here, and here, and through here. Okay, so we're going to start off right here on the end. We're going to fold this like so, lay it flat on the table. We're going to put our bevel right here. Once again, you want to make sure you just go to the center of the paper down here and just follow that line across. One of the real nice things about adding in the bevel marks is it just gives you a real nice thing to follow, and it also makes it so you know what angle you need to go at. And we're going to fold it at this one. Do the same thing on these parts right here. It over. Then we're going to fold here, go right in here, plunge the knife down in, make sure we're coming out to the edge of the paper here. I know there's a lot of beveling on this airplane, but it makes for a really nice finish. Fold on this line, same thing again. gonna do one more here. All right, now that we've got all of our bevels done, we're gonna go on ahead and take a barbecue skewer and just run them down these lines, same as we did on the other piece. Then we're gonna take these and gently fold them up just so it gets that memory. Same thing on this side. All right, now we're gonna set this aside. We need to grab our next piece, which is our firewall right here. And with this piece, it's pretty simple. We're just gonna score right inside of here and here. Fold this open, peel out this center section of foam. Once you have that peeled out, you're going to do a C-fold on this. It's just going to flip up like that. Make sure we've got a good fit. Once you're happy with it, I'm going to take some glue, just a little bit down here on the paper, and then put some right along this edge here. Fold it up, hold it in place until it cools. We're going to bring this piece back, and we're going to start gluing it together. First thing we want to do is right along this 45 right here, we want to add some glue, like so. Flip it up, take our 90-degree angle, hold it in place until it dries. Now that that piece is dry, we're going to move on to the next piece here. We're just going to take and put some glue right down in here on this 45 angle. Right in the corner of the paper, all the way up to the next 45. Set it back down on the table here. Fold this up into place. Now that that's dry, we're going to come along and do the same thing on this side. Put a nice bead of glue down in this 45 bevel here, right along the paper, all the way up to this other 45. Just like the other side. Gonna set it down on the table, flip it up, hold that side in place until it's dry. All right, now that that's all dry, we're gonna take our firewall, and we want this C-fold piece to be facing forward. We're gonna slide it down in here. If you look, you'll see some etch lines built into the plans here. We want to slide that right up to that etch line. Make sure it fits good. We're looking really nice. I'm going to pull it back out, and I'm going to put some glue right along this etch line all the way around. So I'm going to start right here. So now we're going to take this and once again make sure this part sticking out is going forward. Slide it down in place. Once you're in place, we're just going to apply a little bit of pressure on the sides here. Make sure it stays where it needs to until it dries. All right, now that that's dry, we're going to take this piece here, glue along this 45, right along the edge of the paper here, favoring it more towards the foam. Same thing over here. Then we're going to fold that on over. It should line up really nice right there. All right, now that we're going to pay attention to the front here, put some glue right along this line here. We're going to come right along this edge, right in here against the paper. Same thing on this side. All the way up to that 45. And then we're going to set this down on the table. Push it down like so. You might have to kind of push stuff into place a little bit. I'm just going to apply a little bit of pressure on the sides here to make sure it stays in place until it cools down. I'm going to do the same thing again. Right here, here, along this edge, and along this edge. And the last piece here, I'm going to put some right along here, and I'm going to include on the firewall a little bit, so I'm adding quite a bit of glue in here. Along that edge and along this edge. Table is our friend. I'm going to push it down. Just keep a little bit of pressure on the inside edges here. Hold that until it dries. All right, next you want to get this piece. Let's get started on weeding it out and getting it set up. Okay, so once again, we want to come over here to this edge. Just follow these lines right on around. Now this one's a little bit different than what the other ones have been, and it's going to continue all the way around this front and all the way over down the other side to right there. Now that you have that scored, we're going to come through and peel this foam off. All right, we are also going to take our knife and gently push in here. We don't want to go all the way through the paper on the bottom, but we want to get this piece completely taken out of there. Now, if you have trouble with this, a lot of times you can take a barbecue skewer and help pick it out a lot easier. What you're going to end up with is a pocket like that. Then we're going to take our plywood. Then we're going to take our plywood strip here, pop out this piece. We're just going to check and make sure it fits in there good. If you're happy with the fit, just pop it back out of there. I'm not going to put a lot of glue down in here, just a little tiny bit to just kind of hold the paper to the plywood. Push it down in. Then we're going to come back along with our glue. Put a nice bead around like that. Then once that's dry, we're going to come back through with our razor knife again. Finish doing our score cuts. Right there. Right here. Okay. Then we're going to fold this up, cut our bevels. All right, once you have all your bevels cut, we're going to come through and just open up all these cavities like so. I would say out of all the pieces, this is probably the most difficult to do, just because there's a lot of bevels in a pretty tight area. We also want to try to grab these ones here. Now, what I like to do is I take the other end of my barbecue skewer and I just kind of push along this edge to just kind of round these edges off a little bit. It'll just help make it fit together better when we get to that point. All right, so this is what your piece should look like at this point. All right, so now that you have all of your cuts made, we're going to take these, just gently bend them up. Same thing with this one. This one. One. All right, so now we're going to put some glue along this 45 here, this 45 here, and right along this edge. Also, right down the paper on this side to this 45, and along the paper on this side to that 45. Now you're just going to grab this like this, flip it up, flip it on over. And the hardest thing about this is you just want to hold it with your thumbs right inside of here and try to tip it so it's at a 90-degree angle straight up and down on both sides. Make sure that you look good up front. And you want to have these corners back here line right up with this 45. All right, now that we have that, we're going to actually come back through, put some glue inside of this 45 here, all the way along this edge here, favoring it towards the foam. And we're just going to fold that up in place, like so. Set it down on the table and push this right there into place as well. And then just hold that until it dries. All right, once that's dry, just gonna take some glue, put it right in this little crack along here. And I usually just take a piece of scrap foam, kind of push it down, squeegee it off. And then just hold that in place until it dries. All right, now we've got that side done, we're gonna move over to this side and do the exact same thing. All right, once that's dry, we're gonna just continue on gluing right along this edge. I'm gonna put just a couple dabs of glue in here, wrap it around here, go in there. So I don't burn my fingers, I'm gonna take some scrap foam to push this down in place, squeegee off the excess. I'm gonna do the exact same thing on the other side. Now that the canopy's all done, I'm going to kind of set it off to the side. I'm going to get a barbecue skewer here. I want to cut 2 pieces off of our barbecue skewer, about 1 inch long each. Bring it over to the edge of the table. Usually if you just roll your knife across it a couple times, it'll snap right off. They go right in the front of our canopy, right here. I'm just gonna stick it in there, make sure the hole's cleaned out good. You wanna try to get them nice and straight. I'm just going to come through with a bead of glue. You want to leave them sticking out about a 1/2 inch. I also like to come back, flip it over here, and then I just kind of drizzle a little bit of glue in this side to just make sure those are captivated really good. All right, now that wraps up the canopy section of our build. We're going to move on to the tail. To do so, we're going to need this piece right here. All right, we're going to start off with gluing this together, just like we have done previously. All right, once that's dried, we're going to take and score right along here, here, and here. I'm going to peel the foam off of these side parts. Then we're going to break this right here, flip it over, do our bevels. And then you want to take your barbecue skewer, and with these being so fine down here, I like to try to start up at this side with the pointy end of the barbecue skewer. Just drag it through. And it's okay if they kind of get a little squished down here at the bottom. And I'm just going to fold them up. Make sure I don't feel too much resistance. Everything feels good. Our next step is we're going to need these 2 little pieces right here. Once again, we're going to want to score right down through the foam. On both of them. Break them open and just weed out this little piece of foam right in the middle. That way you end up with 2 pieces like that. And we're going to come back over to our hardware kit. Get one of our coffee stirrers out. I'm just going to take a razor blade, cut it just about in half somewhere. It don't have to be perfect. Once we have those cut, we're just going to come along, put a little bit of glue down in this crack, stick our coffee stirrer down in like so. Just try to get it somewhat centered up in there. Doesn't have to be, it just looks nicer if you do. And we're going to do the same thing on this one. just going to take these over to our tail, and right here you'll see there's an etch line. There's one here and one here. Basically these are just going to glue right down on top of those like so. So I'm just going to take a little bit of glue, stick it right down on there, and repeat the same process on this side. Alrighty, now that those have dried, we're going to move on to getting one of our push rod wires out. I'm just going to take this, stick it down in this slot right here, just run it back and forth a couple times, kind of angle it back and forth, just so that the push rod fits nice and smooth in there. Like so. Once you have that, you can spin this around here, get this memory going again. Make sure we got glue around. I'm gonna put some glue right down in this 45. I'm gonna wrap right around this edge on this 45, then come down this channel, favoring the foam, just getting a little bit on the paper. And we're gonna flip this up, put this right in here like so. Now on this piece, it likes to not come all the way up, so you gotta stick your finger on the inside, just push it out until it lines up good. Once you're happy with that, push it down to the table, hold it in place until the glue dries. All right, now that that side's dry, we're going to do the same thing on this other side. Just going to put some glue down in this 45, come around the corner, put a nice bead of glue right along here. Same thing, slide it into place. Make sure that it's pushed out right up here in this front corner. And anytime I'm using the table, I like to kind of take the part and kind of slide it around just a little bit after I glue it down to make sure that there's nothing sticking to the table. All right, now that that's dry, we're going to take our knife right along this edge right here. You can see it's sticking up a little bit. We just want to cut that off at a nice little bevel so it matches up with these side pieces. Now that we have that, we're going to take our push rods. If you look closely, there will be a cut right here on the side. You're going to want to slide one in there. And I've got the Z-bend going towards the back of the airplane right now. I'm going to shove this through, get it right through our coffee stirrer. And right through this hole. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side through this slot that we already widened out. All right, once you have those in, we're going to set that aside. We're going to get our next piece, which is the bottom of the rear fuselage. First thing we're going to do on this is open up our score cuts. Then we're going to peel the foam off this front piece and off the sides. And that's what the piece should look like when you're ready. All right, once we have this all done, I'm gonna come over and I'm gonna test fit it right to the bottom of our fuselage. We want to make sure that the back's lined up right even with this. Everything looks really good. So now I'm just going to lift it back off. We're going to come along with some glue. We're just going to go right down this edge. Nice bead of glue. Do the same thing on the other side. Over here, make sure we line the back up, and I usually go a little bit ahead and kind of set it down in, slide it back so it lines right up with that seam. Then we're going to push the front in, flip it on its side, just kind of apply a gentle pressure to the top up here, and then I'm also taking my thumbs and making sure it's pushed in all the way. I flip it around just to make sure it gets a good square finish. I'm pushing it down against the table. All right, now that that's dry, we're going to set that off to the side. Then we're going to grab our next piece, which is going to be our power pod. It looks like this. To get started, we're going to weed out these right here. All right, now on this piece, you're going to see it has an A-fold right down on here. And if you look at it, that means that the side plates go above the bottom plate. So to do this, what we want to do is set it directly on the table like this, with this piece down, and we're going to fold this up like so. We just want to check, make sure it's got a good fit. We want it to be perfectly 90 degrees with the table. Once you're happy with that, we're going to take some glue. We're going to favor it towards the foam side on this piece. Like so. And then once again, we're going to leave this sitting on the table, and we're going to fold this up. I'm going to take my little gauge here, just make sure we're holding it nice and 90 degrees. After that's dry, we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. Make sure you favor that side of it. Once again, hold it flat to the table, tip it up, hold it in place until it's dry, checking with your gauge to make sure you're at 90 degrees. So now that that's dry, you want to get your firewall out of your kit. And it's going to glue right onto the front here. Just checking to make sure that it looks like a good fit, and it does. So then I'm going to put quite a bit of glue right on this front edge here. I'm going to set this right down on there. Careful not to burn my fingers with the glue. Then we're going to hold that until it dries. Now once you get done gluing your firewall on, you're going to realize that there is an angle on it. Now that's supposed to be there, so don't worry at all. It's actually to make for thrust angle in the motor, so that way your plane doesn't want to torque over when you hit the throttle. Now that we have this glued on, we're actually going to take some packing tape. You want to get 4 or 5 inches. You just want to set it right on here and wrap it around the front. Then the other side. And then I usually just take it on the bottom, fold it in, fold it over. One more piece, about 3 inches long or so. We're going to stick it right on the front here and fold it over the bottom. That just adds a little extra strength to your firewall, so if you have any hard landings and the prop hits the ground or anything along those lines, you don't have to worry about it ripping your motor off. We're going to take and cut out our tape right here in the center, like so, and these other holes as well. Now, depending on what motor you're using, our firewalls have many different bolt patterns. You just have to pick out the ones that fit for your motor. All right, now that we have our firewall all taped on, we're actually going to assemble our fuselage. And to do so, we're going to start off with this piece and the power pod. Gently just going to slide right in here. It's a nice snug fit. Go right through. Slide all the way back until it hits inside. Once you have that piece in, we're going to take our next piece, slide it on the exact same way. Just check our fit in between, which looks really nice. So now I'm going to slide this back out just a little bit. Fold these pieces of paper back. Then we're just going to put a nice bead of glue right along here, along the bottom, and along this side. And a little bit right along the top. And we're just going to slide it together. There might be just a little bit of play, so just make sure everything lines up good. All right, once you're happy with that, just make sure you got a scrap piece of foam laying around. We're going to flip this flap up again. Just put a little bit of glue right down it like so, and then flip it over, squeegee it off. And that just gives it a nicer finish so you can't see the crack in between the pieces. I'm going to do the exact same thing to the other side. Now, after that's dry, what we want to do is take our razor knife. We want to cut the back side of this. Just follow the dotted lines all the way down. same thing on the other line. And if you notice while I'm cutting this, I'm trying to keep the blade so it's parallel with these lines that are running this way. After you get it cut, just pop it out of there like so. And we're just going to set this up here for a moment. Pay attention to this side now. And we're going to do the exact same process, not on this part, but on the front here. Going to follow the line. And the same thing on the other one. Out of there like that. All right. Once you have that, we're going to take this, slide our push rods right down in those holes, and then get our power pod lined up. It can be a little tricky sometimes to get this down in there, but that looks pretty good. So now that I'm happy with the fit, I'm just going to slide it back out. I'm going to take my glue gun, just put some glue all around here and down here. Now I'm going to slide it back together. Gentle pressure to it. I'm kind of shoving it up against my chest here and kind of pulling it back towards me. Just making sure everything's lined up good. All right, now that that's dry, we're just going to come back along here, put a little bit of glue under here again. I don't have to worry too much about where the wing is. Squeegee it down with a piece of bad foam. If you just take your time, make sure you do a good job on this, you'll have a beautiful looking plane when you're all done. On the bottom here you can see I let this flap loose from earlier. I'm just going to put some glue along here. Same thing, just grab your squeegee. And one more side right here. All right guys, after that's dry, and you're to this point, we just want to take our knife, cut these wing holes out. Just follow the dotted lines. over. Do the same thing on the other side. And then we're going to take our canopy and line up these holes right up here. Just kind of push in on it. Sometimes you got to kind of wiggle it around, get it through the holes. And then like that. All right, guys, the fuselage is all wrapped up. Let's get to the wing next. All right, the next step is going to be our wing. To get started, we have 2 of these pieces. We're going to get them weeded out and glued together. We just want to come through these tracks here. Make sure we get all the way through the foam, but we're not cutting into the paper underneath. Then we're going to break it apart, pull the foam out. All right, now that we have both of these weeded out, they should look like this. Now, if you look on here, there is a B fold. There's a little diagram that shows you. So all you want to do is, this is beside the bottom plate. So we want to curve these up while this is sitting flat on the table. These ones are a little rough because they're kind of small. The wing cord on this is not very thick, so you gotta kind of push it around and get it to work for you. Once you're happy with that, we're going to open it back up and we're going to favor the glue to the center section. Put a nice bead of glue down in there. And then flip this up again. I'm pushing kind of down and in at the same time, just so I get a nice squared off corner on the bottom edge here. Same thing on the other side. Now that that spar's done, we're going to do the same thing to the other side. Okay, now that we have both of our spars made, we're going to grab one of the wing sections. And this just so happens to be the right wing. They're labeled R and L. We need to bevel this line right here. You'll see that there's 2 etch marks on each side of it, and it's right where it was folded. So we're going to flip it back open, take our knife, follow that etch line, and right to the center of the paper. Now you'll see that this etch line is a lot farther away, and that's because this has to fold completely back over on itself almost to get the shape we're looking for. Flip it over, do the same thing on the other side here. All right, now we're going to lay it flat back on the table like this. I'm going to take my barbecue skewer, just run down these other 3 lines here, like so. Then I'm going to actually take, pushing down, somewhat distribute weight so you don't wrinkle anything. Just gently push on this. That way it starts to get its shape. last one. Like that. And then we're going to fold this whole thing over. Just nice even pressure. All right, once you're happy with that, we're going to open it back up. We're going to find our right spar. It has an R on it. And when you're looking at this, you're going to see there's etch marks marked in here. You want this little hole that's in the spar to be lined up with your servo. It overlaps a little bit, and that's just so you can kind of get your wire down through without having any problems. Once you're happy with the alignment, we're going to move this out of the way. Put some glue on here. You want to kind of skip a little bit here so you don't get anywhere your servo goes. Make sure you line it up with your marks. Set it down. I kind of wiggle it around a little bit just to kind of spread the glue out, give it a little bit more strength. All right, after that dries, we're going to take the top of the wing. We're going to fold this over. We want to make sure that if you look underneath of here, that our cut line right here rides right on this edge. To do so, you just got to kind of wiggle it back and forth until you can make sure you see the whole line. Once you figure that out, I'm just going to kind of hold it and look at the ends of it and see where I'm sitting at on my spar. So I just have a reference point. Like that. I'm going to open this back up. And I'm not going to put any glue in my 45 yet. I'm actually going to put some glue right inside of here where I ran the barbecue screw through earlier. On these first two. Then I'm going to fold it back over. I'm going to put a lot of pressure right on this first line as I'm doing it. And that's bringing me right over to my mark. And then I'm going to hold that there until it dries. You want to go very light on the glue so that way you don't have any problems of it gluing itself to the spar. If it does glue itself to the spar, just gently pry it back up so that way you can get your glue on the 45 on the front. And as I was saying, sometimes you get a little bit of glue on here. It's not the end of the world, just gently pry it back up. Like so. And then we're gonna put glue right down in this 45. Be pretty generous with this part. We're gonna put glue right along this edge here. This edge here. And then again on this last line back here. Fold it back over, look at our lines on the side, make sure we're lined back up where we should be. Everything looks really nice. Hold it until it's dry. All right, now that that's dry, we're gonna actually come around back here. We're just gonna put a bead of glue right down in this trailing edge here. Like so. I'm just going to push it down on the table, just like that. Now the reason I'm doing it this way and don't have it flipped over like this is the trailing edge of this wing actually comes down just a little bit underneath of the bottom of the wing. All right, now that we're done with this wing, we're going to move on to the other side. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to fold it over. We're going to do our 45 bevel. Well, actually, it's bigger than 45. We're going to do our bevel on this side. And flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. All right, now that you have your second wing done, what we're gonna wanna do is bring both of these halves together, set them flat on the table, upside down. I'm gonna take a piece of tape, so you want to butt them up against each other and tape them together like that. Once you're happy with the fit, I'm going to cut off the extra tape like so. And then we're going to flip it back over. You want to make sure you have your dihedral gauge close by. And what we're going to want to do is go right down in here, open this cavity up some. Plenty of glue down in there like so, and then come back along the top, along the spars, and down the back side like so. And then gently set it back down on the table. And then lift this side up. Put your dihedral gauge right underneath the edge. Hold this side flat down to the table. Let it dry. We're going to take another piece of tape. Stretch it right along the top like so. Then I'm going to come back along and we're going to trim out this piece of tape on the bottom here. All right, the next step is going to be to just gently open up these score lines on the ailerons, flip them open, and do our bevel cut on those. Then I'm going to come back along, a little bit of glue right down in that hinge line, grab a scrap piece of foam, squeegee it off. It's going to make our hinge nice and strong so it lasts for a long time. When you're doing that, I like to take this, kind of put it back into the place where it should be, or roughly around there. You just got to make sure you don't have any glue globs or anything in there that's going to make it stick. Now that that's dry, we're going to do the same thing on the other side. All right, now that we have that, I like to take a piece of control wire, just slide it down in between these lines right here. Just make sure that it moves nice and free. It doesn't catch it all. Just gives it that little bit of extra clearance that it needs. Okay, the wing's all wrapped up. Now we're going to move on to the tail. Okay, the first part of the tail that we want to do is the rudder. So what we're going to do is open up this score cut, break that open, and do our bevel on this side. Once you get your bevel done, come back through, reinforce this hinge line with a little bit of glue, a squeegee, like so. All right, now that we have the hinge for our rudder done, we're going to bring our fuselage over. We're going to take the ends of this and just gently kind of push them in a little bit here and here. And then we're going to slide it right down in like that. And then you want to flip it over, kind of look at the bottom here and make sure we're lined up. Slide it down in. Once you're happy with the fit, we're just going to raise this up a little bit. I'm going to take my glue gun, just put a little bit of glue right along the edge here, right down the center. Same thing on this side, just a little bit of glue on the tab. Go just a hair more down the center. And we're going to slide it back in. Now with the way I designed this notch system on this, you shouldn't have to worry too much about it being straight. It should automatically level itself up and be perfectly perpendicular with the tail. All right, after that dries, we're going to flip it over. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue right in this slot to lock the bottom of the tail in. And then we're going to go on ahead and cut these out. Flip it over, do the same thing on the other side. Okay, next we're going to move on to our stabilizer. And once again, we're going to open up this score line, break it open, and do our bevel on this side. Bead of glue. And squeegee that off. Once that's dry, we're going to bring our fuselage back over and we're going to test fit this into place. And what I like to do is right here on the edge of this, I just kind of take my finger, put a little bit of a bevel in that edge just to help it make it easier to slide into where it goes into the rudder. Going to slide it in and make sure it lines up with the rudder down inside. Slide it forward, make sure it's pushed all the way up against on both sides. Just a little bit of pressure, you don't want to push it too hard and bend anything. And it should make the back of it right even with the hinge line on the elevator. Once you're happy with that fit, we're just going to flip it over. Just put a bead of glue right along the bottom edge here. On both sides. And then I'm going to come back with a squeegee and just kind of push it in. And I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing to the top on both sides. The next step, we're going to take the canopy off here and we're going to slide our wing in. Now you want to be careful when doing this. You got to kind of wiggle stuff around and apply a little bit of pressure. Just be careful not to put any creases or wrinkles on your fuselage when you're doing this. You're going to start off with just kind of sliding it in place. Just gently work it in. It's a slightly snug fit. I just wanted to give it a nice clean finish. So it's going to be tight. Whoops. Now when you get to this point, if you look down in here, it's a little bit below where it needs to be, and that's because of the dihedral in the wing. So I actually had to cut a section out so it would have like kind of a V shape in the fuselage. Now to get it up on top of there, what I was doing was just taking a razor blade, just kind of get it up underneath of there, gently push on it, and it usually pops up over it without too much effort. That. And just slowly work it in. And you just want to line up the center of the wing right here at the center of the fuselage. And once you're happy with that, just take a little bit of glue, go in here, put it right along the top of the wing where it meets the fuselage. Now, if you have trouble getting your glue gun in here, you're more than welcome to do it on the outside and just take a squeegee and squeegee it in. I just like the clean look of not having it there, but it's completely up to you. Okay, now we're gonna get started on our landing gear. So we need to get out our piece of plywood again, and we need to cut out this piece right here, piece right below it, this piece right here, and this very bottom piece. Okay, now that we have these cut out, we're going to simply just line these up like so, and then this is going to go right in the middle like that. We just want to look and make sure that it fits nice, and then we're going to glue them in place with a little bit of CA. Just make sure you apply a little bit of pressure, make sure it's stuck down good. And we're going to apply this piece too. Now we're going to take our medium landing gear wire, and we're going to put a mark directly in the middle. It is 15.5 inches long, so we're going to go 7 3/4. Now that we have that, we're going to take our pliers. We're simply just going to bend this over. It takes a little bit of force. If you have trouble with this, you can use a vise or a heavier pair of pliers. And our goal here is to make this fit right in this little slot. Gotta kind of play around with it a little bit. So it's gonna look just like that. Once you have that, we're gonna pop this back out. We're just gonna put some CA down in here. And set it in place. Then you're gonna add a little bit more CA to the top of it. And then we're gonna apply CA to the whole surface here. And put the other piece of plywood on the other side. We're going to go back to our tape measure. We're going to mark 3/4 of an inch from the end. Put a line there. Going to do the same thing on this other side. Once you have those marks, you're going to just grab this. We want to try to line it up, so we're going to be bending it perfectly parallel with this. If you're off a little bit, you can just kind of twist. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. What I like to do is just kind of set it on the table. You can set it up like this too, and you can see this one still is off the table just a little bit, so that means we need to bend it more. This one's nice and flat, so it should be good. The more time you spend on this, the better it's going to turn out and the nicer it's going to look, and the wheels will track straight and have a lot more luck going straight down the runway. All right, that looks pretty good right there. Now that that's done, we're just going to simply slide our wheels on here. We're going to take our wheel collets that are included in the kit. And tighten that down. Do the same thing on this other side. I want to leave just a little bit of play. The back of the wheel is going to go all the way up against where our bend is. And you want just a little bit of play there so it spins nice and free. All right, now that we have that done, we're going to turn our attention to the fuselage here. We're going to flip it over. You want to be careful with your rudder. Make sure you have it sitting off the end of the table so you don't bend it. And this slot right here, we're going to cut open. And peel the piece of foam out. All right, now if you look down in there, you'll see that it lines right up with the hole that's in the wing. And all you simply do, slide this down in there. It makes a really nice tight fit. Once you're happy with that, we're going to pull it back out. And we're just going to put some glue down in here. We're going to try to get it right on the edge of that hole that's in the wing. And go on ahead and let it kind of drizzle down to the top of the wing where there is no hole. We're going to put some glue right along this edge as well, and up here a little bit. Then simply just slide it back down in, and that's going to lock everything in place, including the wing to the fuselage. Once that's nice and dry, we're going to flip it over. Going to set it off to the side here, and then we're going to get our next plywood pieces for the front landing gear. Okay, now that we have our other piece of landing gear wire here, we're going to take our ruler. We're going to measure 1/2 inch in on from one end. Put a line. We're going to bend this over 90 degrees. Sometimes it helps if you go a little bit past and then bend it back. It gives it a nice sharp angle. And we're going to fit it into our plywood here, make sure it fits good, which it does. And while we're at it, we're going to grab our CA. Put on one side of this and set it down on there. Okay, now that we have that, we're going to set that in place. We're just going to take a mark, put it right out here, like so. Now when you do this, you have to make sure that you bend it the proper way. And to do so, we want to actually bend it down towards the table. So I'm going to grab my pliers. While holding it like this, I'm going to remove that, grab it right there. Try to get it as straight as 90 degrees as possible. Just bend it around like so. Okay, now that we have that bent, we're going to come back right where that bend starts. We're going to go 5 inches. Put another line there. We're going to take that. We need to try to get squared up so that it's going to be 90 degrees from this line here. And fold it over again. And then we need a 90-degree angle right here. You can set it on the table to check yourself. If you look close here, I'm actually kind of tilted in a little bit, so I'm going to grab this, try to bend it back out. That looks a lot better. All right, once we have that, we're going to go from the inside of this line right here, 3/4 of an inch. Put another line. And this can be the tricky part here. A lot of people use bolt cutters or a Dremel tool, or with some pressure here, you kind of go around and score it. And make sure you watch your eyes when you're doing that, because it can go flying across the room. I'm going to take this, flip it over in here. Some CA on it, glued in place. I'm being pretty generous with the CA here. I want to make sure that this thing holds up for a long time. You want to make sure this is good and dry before you put it in the plane, because we don't want to get our hot glue on this wet surface. It just won't stick well. So just give it some time, make sure it's good and dry. All right, now that we've got this piece dry, I'm gonna flip the plane back over here. Once again, watch out for your rudder, make sure you don't smash it against the table. And this is basically gonna just slip down in here like so, and sit right down on the power pod. Right now it looks like we don't have enough angle in our piece here, so I'm gonna pull it back out. I'm just going to bend this down some more. Gonna use the table to help us. Let's give that a shot. All right, that looks pretty good right there. So now that I have this, I'm going to make sure I've got plenty of glue in my glue gun. And we're gonna apply a very generous amount directly to the bottom of this wood plate. Like that. And we're gonna carefully take this, slide it down in here, set it right down, make sure we're nice and straight on that power pod. And I want to be about 1/4 of an inch off of the back of this cowl spacing here. Okay, now that that's dry, we're going to take our front wheel, set it on here, put our wheel collar on. So now that we've got our front gear glued on, I'm going to flip it over here and I'm just going to look at it. And we need to make sure that we have some positive angle in the front of the wing. And that just helps you get off the ground better so it's not fighting itself. Our landing gear is all done. Now we're going to move on to our electronics. All right, now we're going to start off with electronics. I'm going to get this canopy out of our way and just set it off to the side. And as you can see, our push rod wires are sitting right down in here. Right, here's one and here's one. These are going to be for the elevator and the tail rudder. So what we're going to have to do basically is glue our servos down in here. We're going to get those set up. So I'm going to set this off to the side for a moment and grab my servos. We're going to take our servo centering tool here. Get this plugged in. You want to make sure that the brown is connected to the negative, and then the signal wire, which is S, will be the orange or yellow wire. We're going to plug a battery in. And we're just going to hit this button right here one time, which will put it in the neutral position. I'm going to go on ahead and do both of these at the same time. All right, so we want to take this control horn right here, stick it right down on top of here. Try to get it as close to 90 degrees with the servo as you can. We're going to stick our servo screw in. And then we're going to set our other servo right next to that one and get our other control horn. And we're going to go the exact opposite way, so they'll be pointing in towards each other. Still as close as possible to 90 degrees as you can get it with the servo. And put our screw in. All right, once you get both of these in there, I'm going to flip this over. Just make sure they're working properly. And then we're going to center them again. Then I'm going to unplug the servos. Now our next step is going to be come over here to the tail. And we're going to need to get our control horns out of our hardware bag and get these popped out. Now that we have our control horns, we're simply going to just take this, put it in the farthest out hole, flip it up like so. Then we're going to slide this all the way up. And there should already be a score mark in the rudder here. You're just going to push it into it like that. Once you're happy with that fit, we're going to pop it back out. Put a bead of glue right down in that slot. Stick this back in. Now when you go to do this, you want to make sure that your holes right here are lined up directly with your hinge line. I always like to take a little bit of extra glue just to make sure these don't come loose. Put right along there. All right, now that that's dry, we're going to flip it over. We're going to do the same thing to the elevator right back here. Same thing on the farthest out hole. Slip it in there, make sure it fits. Everything's sitting the way we want it to. Add some glue. And slide it back down in. And I'm going to come back along, just put a bead of glue on the side. Once that's dry, we're going to flip the plane back over. We're going to grab one of these wires here. That's going to be our elevator. I am going to take this, we're going to do a Z-bend on it. At this point, if you want to, you're more than welcome to use linkage stoppers that are included in your power pack, but I prefer Z-bends. It's just less things that can go wrong as far as connection points. So I'm going to bend this down. You don't have to be exact as long as it's somewhere in this area. I'm going to take this, grab it from the side, bend it over this way, and then we're going to just rotate this forward. Oops. Like so. Then you have a Z-bend. I'm also going to take and cut off this little bit of extra I have here. Make sure you hold on to it and watch your eyes. All right, so now what I want to do is prep this servo for glue. I'm going to take the side facing away from our control horn and just scuff it up. You can use some sandpaper if you want. I usually just take my utility knife, put some scratches in it this way and that way. Once you have that, we're going to simply just take this. I'm going to go to the second from the outside hole, slip it down in, and then pop it into place. You want to try to be careful not to move your servo back and forth so it doesn't get out of adjustment. We want to keep it centered. Once you have that, we're going to take some glue, put on the back of the servo right here, and we're going to set it down in here. Don't touch it to the wall yet. We want to make sure that the tail is nice and straight so that the elevator is perfectly parallel with the rest of the surface here. And then we're going to push it up against the side of the power pod. And after that dries, you're going to end up with this. All right, just move that wire out of our way. Grab your other control rod here. This one's a bit long, so you got to kind of wiggle it out of there. You're going to do the same thing over here. I usually try to get them somewhat in the same spot as the other side, but once again, it doesn't matter. You've got plenty of room to move. Bend that over. And I'm going to cut this off again, like that. All right, so now that we have our Z-bend done, we're going to take our servo. Got to remove the sticker off of this one. We're going to scuff this side up. And then we're going to take this, we're going to put it on the outside hole for the rudder and tip it up. And we're going to put a generous amount of glue right on the side of this servo, like so. And Slide it down in here. Careful not to touch it to the power pod yet. You want to make sure your rudder's lined up nice and straight. Like so. And then push it against. And that's what you're going to end up with. All right, now that we've got our elevator and rudder done, we're going to flip this over and we're going to concentrate on the ailerons now. Now, if you don't have a servo centering tool available, you can actually just plug this into your receiver and center them up that way. Same thing again here. We're going to go opposite of one another, so I'm going to put this on this side. Put our screw in. Same thing on this side. Okay, now that we have our servos centered, I'm going to see which one fits on which side. Well, this one goes over here, and this one's going to go right here. I'm going to scuff the bottom of this up. And we'll do the same thing on this one, peel off the sticker if we have to. All right, so now we're going to take this wire, feed it down in this slot, push it over towards the center of the airplane. We're going to flip over here, and right there's our wire. Needle nose to grab it. Just pull it right through. Once you have that, we're just going to put a nice healthy bead of glue on that plastic surface we just scuffed up. And just place it right down in its spot. Like so. I'm going to repeat the same process on this side over here. Go to set this in, I'm just kind of pulling on the wire to make sure it doesn't get snagged up anywhere. Nice and gentle. Push it down, kind of wiggle it around a little bit, make sure it's in there nice and solid. All right, our next step is going to be to grab another push rod wire. We're going to go to the second of the last hole, just like we did with the elevator. And we're going to grab our control horn for the aileron. Get this slot opened up. Shove it right down in there. Then we're going to grab a Sharpie and hold the aileron right here in line with itself. And we're going to put a dot right where it meets up with the top hole on the aileron. Once you're happy with that, we're just going to take our needle nose Grab a hold of it right on that mark. We're going to bend it over that way. Grab it there. Bend it up. And bend it back. And then cut off the excess. We're going to slip our plywood back out. Slide that through the hole like so. Do a test fit, make sure everything looks good there. Come back with the glue. Slide it in place. And if you're off a hair, like if you see right here, I've got just a little bit of a drop, you can actually cheat it and just kind of slide this back a little. Like so. Until you're lined up on the edge. Come back and reinforce this glue joint a little bit. Now we're going to repeat the same process on the other side of the wing. Just like before, we're going to go into the second to the last hole. Grab our control horn. All right, now that we have the wing done, we're gonna flip it back over here, set it back down, and we're gonna get our motor out. And for this, I'm using our B-Pack, the 2212. I'll grab the ESC, we'll set our props off to the side here. All right, so we're gonna try to find these screws right here. They're flush mount screws, so we can put our T motor mount on. We're just gonna flip this over, get it in place. Gonna grab our Phillips screwdriver, mount this down. Now, if your T-brace or X-brace does not line up with your holes, just spin it a quarter of a turn. A lot of the motors out there have an offset on their 4 motor screws on the back of the motor. All right, after we get those all put in, so I'm going to take my motor wires and I'm going to shove them right through this little hole down in the bottom corner here. Like so. Sometimes the last one can be a little tricky because you already have 2 other wires going through. And slide that in. We're going to grab these screws right here. Line up my holes and screw the motor down. Okay, now that we have the motor installed, we're going to grab our ESC and get it opened up. We want to hook our wires up down here. It's kind of tricky, but if you just grab a pair of needle nose, it's not too bad. All right, so now that we got our motor hooked up, if you guys didn't install it earlier, it is a little tricky to get the wires in, but it's totally doable. We're going to check our motor direction. So I have my servo tester hooked up here. We're going to plug in our motor. Once it arms, we're going to spool it up and check our direction. Right now we're going clockwise, which is the wrong way, so I have to reverse 2 of the wires. All right, so now we're going the right direction. We're going to unplug that, get rid of our servo tester, and then we're on to hooking up our receiver. Okay, so now I've got my receiver here. We're simply going to take our 2 aileron wires, one from each side of the wing. And if you're using a 6-channel, you can hook this up on separate channels, but in this case, we're just going to use a Y harness. Make sure you match up your colors properly. And we're using a Spectrum 6-channel receiver here. Channel 2 is going to be our ailerons. So I'm simply going to just plug that into channel 2. We're going to take our elevator, plug into channel 3. Rudder into channel 4, and then our throttle from our ESC is going to go into number 1. We're going to push all these wires back in here. And it's completely up to you if you want to mount your receiver. You're more than welcome to. I'm just going to set it right there. Now I've got my receiver installed. I'm going to get the battery installed in here, and I'm going to cut a piece of rough Velcro. Peel off the backing. And we're going to just put it right down in here on the power pod, just in front of where it cuts out for the wing. Now, if you're using a 1300 3-cell, we're going to slide it in, and it should basically sit right on that mark where it cuts out for the wing. Should be the back of the battery, and it should be forward from there. I'm simply going to put our canopy back on. And there's a couple of dimples on the bottom of the wing here. We're just going to lift it up by those and see if we seem balanced or not. And actually right there's perfect, so we're all set. All right, we're going to get this bound up to our radio, set up some trims, and I'm going to grab one of my friends and we're going to go out flying. All right guys, so we got the airplane all built. Now we're going to fly it. I brought one of my friends out here. This is Josh.
Hi.
So let's have some fun.
Typically, whenever you fly an airplane, wait till a calm day, unless you're an established pilot. And also, we have a great video called 6 Quick Tips for a Successful First Flight. That's a mouthful, but it gives you a lot of the basics to make sure you have the best experience possible.
All right, you ready?
Yeah. So this is really special here. I love the new techniques that Dave has put into this model, but I also think because of these new techniques, you're going to be able to design a whole bunch of more airplanes.
Yes, yeah, and I mean, in my opinion, they're really easy to build. They just kind of fold themselves together as long as you follow the video and do all the score cuts and everything like you're supposed to.
One of the cool things about the actual Vans Aircraft RV-12iS is just its presence in the air. It's just very soft and gentle.
Yeah, they did a great job designing the plane. I basically just copied them. Yep. Yeah, it's flying great. Even in all this wind, it still just cruises. It punches right through it. Would you like to give it a shot?
Put it in for a landing and I'll take it around.
All right. Oh, well, it's not wanting to land. Oh, got caught in the wind.
All right, you ready? Mike, you ready? So gentle. All right, I know that this plane, you know, the real plane's not supposed to be able to do this, but I want to roll upside down. Look at that.
Beautiful.
Just a little bit of forward input. Sorry, Mike. Want to do a big loop? All right, 3, 2, 1. This is off of a little Power Pack B too.
Yeah, it won't go straight vertical, but it'll climb for a little bit.
I'm happy with it.
All right, guys, thanks for joining along in the build process. And if you like this, it's available in the store, so make sure you go check it out.
See you next time.
Glue gun's not hot yet. It's not plugged in.
Oh my goodness.
Darn it. I plugged it in. I promise. I gotta remember how this thing went together. Isn't that horrible?
Left on these cards.